Welcome to the After Dark podcast, the podcast in which Anthony leads his unknowing friend Konrad by the hand through TV shows. Will Konrad like them? Will Konrad hate them? Will Konrad predict what's going to happen, or will he be lost in the dark? Find out now, only on the After Dark podcast.
Hello and welcome to the After Dark podcast. I'm Anthony James and that is Konrad.
Hello.
That's him. Well, Konrad, how are you this week?
I'm very good. I am caught in a post-OA malaise now, as at the end of this episode, I have to confront the reality that there is just no more of this left. And none of these questions are going to be answered.
Yeah, well, before we get into that, well, I want to talk about that very, very soon, but Konrad, come on, congratulations.
Yeah. I'm 2 for 2 on predicting like the big twist at the end of shows now, and I'm pretty pleased with that. I feel like they kind of we'll get there when we get there, but I feel like they kind of give you enough clues to figure it out for yourself in this one. It was certainly harder than the previous series we did, but I'm still pleased with myself. I'll take the points.
Yeah. You should be. Like, there's some people in the comments being like, "Wow!" All I can say is "Wow." I just can imagine people coming in just for the OA that weren't with us in Dark, and they're just like, "Who is this weirdo? Like, who's this guy who's predicting all this stuff?" Because, like, I think as well, like, something has to be said for the fact that we are, you're going to be talking about each episode for at least an hour. So yeah. You're listening and taking notes, whereas usually people don't do that. So
yeah, like it definitely. I think I'm watching. I give certainly a more flattering impression of myself in terms of my attentiveness to detail than I would normally have. Although I will say I would normally spot aspect ratio changes. That's always like something which stands out to me. And this show, by the end of this episode, they are going fucking nuts with the aspect ratio changes. It's just like shot and reverse shot in different aspect ratios just to make sure that you got the point.
Yeah.
But like, I mean, it's a shame. It's a shame we're almost certainly not going to see more of this, because I would have loved to have seen where this show went from here.
Yeah, and again, we'll talk about it more next week on the Theory Matrix episode, all the ideas of like when the show would come back, or is the show coming back, and all the times that it was teased that it would come back and it didn't. We're going to cover that all next week, but I will just say, last week when I was talking to you about, like, I was sort of playing very coy in sort of the way I was talking, saying if it is the case and stuff like that, but now you just know that I was talking as if it is the case.
Yeah.
And I honestly believe there's something, even though my head tells me no, there's something deep down in me that says, if you were going to have a season 3 based on where the season ends, you would have to cancel the show in real life.
Yeah,
like, there's something there which says to me that's what Hap would do. Hap would get the show cancelled so that Britt Marling never realizes that she's the OA again. Like,
I love that idea, and I choose to believe that that's absolutely the case. And in 10 years' time, the OA will return to like a chorus of cheers from the awaiting fans.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm not going to mention, like next week, I'll go into specific detail about 1 or 2 instances where they thought the OA was going to come back. Interestingly enough, Konrad, anyone who's interested, go over to the OA subreddit. There's a current theory going on based on Zalbut Munglich's Instagram and other things, like I think Will Brown is the name of the actor. Oh no, Scott Brown is the character. Will something. He's like dressing in the same way as Scott would have done, and he's in the same place Scott would have been at a certain time in the show right now on his Instagram stories and stuff. And it's causing everyone to go mad, thinking that there's a date coming up later in May where it's going to be announced that season 3 is coming. But this happens every few months. Every few months, there's like there's a whole like deep dive.
The ravings of a madman is what this sounds like to me.
Yeah.
Listen, I was there for Firefly. I remember, and like Firefly didn't have the same kind of fertile ground for wild theories as I'm sure the OA does, and even then people were like desperately theorizing about how another series might happen. So I'm sure with the OA the gloves are off. It's just like any time Britt Marling is pictured anywhere, it's like, is it Britt or is it the OA?
Yeah, well, this is what I was going to say. I was going to go into this next week, but I may as well say it now because it's only a short thing. I've always had an idea for to make a video saying, we need to look out for Britt Marling, because the thing is, say that the OA is now finished, right? I could honestly see, and I don't think it will, but I could honestly see a case where Brit Marling goes insane. Like, you know...
Or just in real life.
In real life, goes insane thinking, am I actually the OA? Because look, the way they wrote it is that she would end up just being Brit Marling again in the world and not believing that she was the OA and that the show was, you know, that she wouldn't believe she's the OA anymore. It's perfect fodder, or it's a perfect setup for her to actually go insane and think she is the character.
Yeah, when she's older, she'll insist on being referred to as Prairie as like the dementia sets in, and it would just be like, okay, like, well, what is reality?
Yeah, so we need what would be really great is this is really going off the deep end. What if, like, in like 5 years' time, they just released season 4 and season 3 was in our world the whole time,
a performance,
and they actually just acted
piece.
Out everything, and it's literally
That'd
just all on Instagram and Twitter and stuff. And then season 4...
that'd be so good. That'd be so good if they just had like a YouTube supercut of like them doing the movements in just like some streets in I guess. I don't know if it's said where they turn up at the end of this, or if it's implied that it's Hollywood. I guess it's probably San Francisco still.
No, it's London. I think it's London.
Oh, is it London?
Did you not recognise the ambulance?
Oh yeah, of course. It's a British ambulance, isn't it?
And the woman was like, Brit.
Yeah, we'll get to the accents at the end at the end of this episode. Jason Isaacs in particular.
Isaacs.
Yeah, he did a weird thing with his voice, which I enjoyed, but at the same time, it was like, I feel like he was doing something. I feel like he didn't need to do something with his voice at the end of this, given he is English.
All right. Okay, so guys, subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already. The Culture Cave is what it's called. If you want to listen to us on podcasting apps, why don't you download it? Sometimes I find there's a bit more traffic on the road than I was usually used to, so sometimes it's good to have the podcasts load up. So if you're planning on going home and watching it after school, sorry, I work in a school, I always say school. If you're planning on going home to watch it after work and then you get caught in traffic, well, it'd be cool to have it on the phone as an audio app. So there's no harm in having it, guys. There's no harm in having it.
You can watch it after school as well if you want.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I've never left school. I went from school to university, back to school. I will forever say after school, and I'm sorry for that, but I will.
Never worked a day in his life.
Never. Come on. At least three. All right. So thanks very much, guys. Like the video, all that sort of jazz. Link in the description for a t-shirt. Thank you very much. We've made a few more sales in the last week or two. Thank you very much. That helps support the channel. And let's just get into it, Konrad. What do you say?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, let's break it down.
So the final episode of the OA, hopefully not, but yes, it is, opens with Nina/Prairie. Just like how I explained last week, like the water and the orange juice mixed together, are outside, and she's smoking a cigarette, and Hap and Homer are sort of watching her through the camera.
Yeah, so there's a very enjoyable kind of subtle difference in Brit Marling's performance in this episode when she's portraying the sort of hybrid Nina Prairie version of herself, where she kind of carries herself with like a lot more confidence and a certain amount of sort of sensuality in her movements, which I think is the way that she does it. I found quite subtle, which is impressive, to be honest. Not subtle, but something I still enjoyed was the fact that throughout this episode, the OA is wearing white and Hap is wearing black, which is it's like the goddamn end of Equilibrium where Christian Bale fights that guy and they have to wear opposing colours because that's the kind of visual language they're going for. I did enjoy it, but it is also a bit like, okay, I get it. I get the metaphor.
And also, Hap says about maybe she's got multiple personality disorder.
Yeah, DID?
Yeah, like it's a new. I've
never heard it called that before.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was the new term to use. But yeah. So and then Hap's just like, you know, he's like, I can't believe I didn't realize that. And Hap's like, well, you were in the delusion, you know. It's like Homer's just playing into his hand here. Well, until very soon into the episode, I felt. I don't know. Okay, about this episode overall. I felt this episode was a lot. It felt quicker than it was. It was only it was about 40 minutes long, but it really did feel like they were just going like bang, bang, bang. Let's get to the end now. You know?
Yeah, I think I actually I did enjoy this episode. I think it was a good ending to the season. I think that the hooks that it throws out for the potential next season are enticing. I think I had a few problems actually with how short it was because it did really move at a clip. I would have liked about 10 minutes more of a certain character's story because I felt like they were just kind of thrown away. But we'll get there. We'll get to it when we get to it.
I'm assuming that's Kareem.
I'm saying nothing. You have to listen on.
Okay, all right, I'll listen on.
Yeah.
All right, just imagine me in like 5 days' time, just like sitting listening to us again. I'll listen on.
Yeah, on tenterhooks.
Yeah. Okay, so it sort of flashes then, or sort of into the other original reality, I suppose.
Yeah, lovely match cut.
Yeah,
a literal match cut, in fact, because it's literally the same door.
Literally the same door. Yep. And so they're in the at Treasure Island now. So they went on Jesse's prediction or whatever.
Yeah.
And so they went there. They sense Nina / Prairie's about. And yeah, was there anything in particular about? I think it's just showing us that they're there. Was there anything in particular that you noticed?
I mean, just from a production standpoint, they haven't really played with kind of editing techniques too much between the dimensions in this show. So it's really cool to see them start doing it. Obviously, like in the previous show that we watched, Dark, there was a lot of match cuts between people doing things in different timelines. Yeah, it was nice to see that here. But apart from that, obviously, it's just a way of kind of compounding the fact that they are all in the same place with the editing.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And then it does another one back to Nina / Prairie.
Yeah.
The OA, and she walks into Treasure Island.
Yeah.
So she walks up and says, "Well, it's funny because in the last episode she walked up and said, I'm here to see Dr. Percy," and then she obviously went back outside and started smoking, just waiting for them to let her in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so she's going back in now. Kareem now is. You mentioned in the last episode it was sort of like when Kareem went to see Mo. It was like that Kareem was setting up to sort of go off the chessboard, so to speak. Like, he was giving all his information to Mo so that he could then sort of go away. And again, it kind of did that again, where he wrote Mo on the envelope, and it was leaving stuff for her again.
Yeah, I didn't. So he leaves her his dictaphone, which I'd forgotten he had, to be honest. I think it was a dictaphone anyway. I vaguely remember him like recording stuff on it in like the first couple of episodes, and then it kind of got left behind. He also leaves a lighter, which I don't really understand the significance of. I don't know if that's something we've missed or something that maybe they would have expanded on further down the line.
Yeah.
But yeah, this is absolutely a continuation of that, and it makes me really interested for what they were going to do with Mo as a character, because she holds a huge amount of, I guess you'd call it plot critical information. It's always kind of hard.
I thought you were going to say weight there, and I was like, geez, careful with a pregnant woman. She's going to say weight.
She's glowing. She holds a lot of kind of information that's important to this dimension, but as with the first dimension or the first season, I feel like by the end of this episode, the stakes have been raised so much that it's kind of like the San Francisco kind of Pierre Ruskin Q Symphony plot line almost isn't really that important anymore, because we're kind of going beyond that. So I would have been really interested to see how Mo used this information and what it actually meant for the plot line. I guess by the end of this episode, Kareem is still there. I don't know exactly where he is. A certain like place seems to be a nebulous term by the end.
He might have actually went through the ruse window in the same way that Buck / Michelle did.
Yes, that's true. One thing I will say about this scene is, though, I have no idea how Kareem sleeps with that flashing red light outside his window, because that is, and in fact, actually, it's funny. It's a clear visual choice to have Kareem spend probably about 50 to 60% of his time in this episode just bathed in very atmospheric red lighting. And it starts here and it continues for pretty much the entire episode. He's always kind of in this red light. I'm assuming it's like a storm warning light or something here, because there's a storm coming. But I would invest in some blackout blinds if I were him.
But it was also throughout Prairie and Hap in the Treasure Island as well. So
yeah.
It's sort of recurring the whole way through this episode. I thought this episode was actually visually very, very good to look at.
Yeah, I agree. That's definitely one of the stronger things about this episode.
Yeah. So in terms of Mo, I think that potentially, in my mind, I think where could she have went next season? And I think that you needed to have some, like, who else in this universe, in this like sort of reality, would be able to continue the storyline within it, because I don't believe that we're going to leave behind the realities. I don't think we're going to just go away and never come back. So maybe she would have been left to find out. Maybe her job would then to find out what happened to Kareem.
Yeah, I mean, she could go after Pierre. Like, that could be that could be a more grounded plotline. I think the reason I thought that they might be leaving it behind is because really in this season, the only reason we've been looking at the first dimension is to get the boys and BB-8 to where they are at the end of this season. And now that they've all gone to the same place, it's a bit like, do we need those other two dimensions now? Are they still relevant to anything? But I guess they could have been. They must have been, because Mo has been included in this for some reason.
Yeah, look, I think that Pierre Ruskin wasn't going to go away. I think that Pierre Ruskin wanted Kareem to do what he did. So I think that Pierre Ruskin, by Kareem doing what he did, will have gained more knowledge of what the house does. And I think Pierre Ruskin would have become a bigger player later in the game. That's how I personally feel about it.
I think that's right.
Yeah, so Kareem is away now. So he leaves the letter for Mo. Then we get one of my favorite moments of the episode, which is hard to say because there are a number of good moments in this episode. But I love the little moment between the OA and Homer. Obviously, the joke is hilarious.
It's a very blue joke from Nina there. Like, you would not catch Prairie telling a joke like that.
Yeah, I mean, come on, it was actually hilarious though.
It was a good gag. I enjoyed it very much.
But the little subtle things that happened in this scene, where like she very purposely went into his face but didn't kiss him. She put her hand on the glass for him to touch her hand. She went up maybe she obviously didn't plan this, but she went up the spiral staircase with Hap like she would have in the other one. Like, there was red light. It all added. He was behind a glass pane. It all added up to him coming to the realization and him sort of becoming amalgamated with Dr. Roberts and Homer coming to the surface, which we all knew was going to come eventually. And the moment where it happens and the music swells and he's like behind the glass and he just starts going, "Away, away!" I thought it was really effective.
Yeah, it was a very, very impactful moment, and I think it's really interesting characterization for the OA in that it kind of speaks to her leveraging the like confidence and assertiveness of Nina's personality to do something that she herself or that Prairie herself wouldn't have done, like the sort of, leaning in to kiss Homer and then pulling back and taking charge of the situation basically is ultimately the thing, and that's very much what Nina's personality is bringing to the table here, is ultimately the thing that brings her Homer to the surface, and then as you say, this phenomenal kind of like emotional crescendo to this scene where he finally wakes up. It's not in the theory matrix because it's only a little thought, but it felt that the timing of this felt very deliberate to me and made me wonder whether like Hap actually orchestrated the power cut to get Homer away from her. I mean, it sounds a bit far-fetched, but it just seemed like very convenient for Homer to be the one that gets trapped in there.
Or maybe, I agree with you. But the way that Nina was sort of taking charge of the situation and really trying to bring him out, it almost felt, and we also saw later on that whenever she stands up and it's had the angel wings behind her, something happens where her emotion or something that happens within her turns the lights back on. So maybe just by the fact she was doing it, maybe she did it, even subconsciously.
It could be, yeah. I feel like someone did it. Maybe not Hap, but it definitely felt deliberate to me.
Yeah, or, nothing's a coincidence, as they say. But yeah, so I will say as well, I just realized we're talking about this current reality for the possible next season, if there ever was one, or if there was going to be one, obviously. You have to remember, the likelihood is that Prairie is going to leave Nina behind, just like Elodie leaves the other one behind. So she would still exist. Like, Nina would still exist in this, and then her with Pierre Ruskin would have also been a really interesting dynamic. Once I would wonder whether Nina would remember having Prairie within her and stuff. So there is that there as well,
Yeah, no, that is interesting actually. I hadn't really thought about that, but yeah, there's definitely fodder for further character arcs in this dimension between Nina and Pierre.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so the boys and BB-8 go into the Treasure Island and they see the aquarium, the 5-sided aquarium, which, to be honest with you, then Buck the way it was done was a bit strange. Like, Buck immediately realized what it was, but at the same time, like, they are obsessed with this, like, almost like cult-like obsessed with it. So, it kind of makes sense that they would recognize straight away.
Don't tell the FBI that.
Yeah, exactly. But they said something which to be honest with you, I don't know how I didn't even realize this. It didn't.
I think I had this exact same reaction.
Yeah,
to
when
this.
they said it's basically like a miniature version of the cells that Hap kept them in, I was like, yeah, obviously that's what this is.
Yeah, as soon as they said that, I was like, mind blown. I didn't clock that at all, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah, exactly. Right, so now you're gonna go back and watch it again and look at what fish are in the aquarium and what cell.
Yeah. Which one's Scott?
yeah.
There's one that's got like dreadlocks. That's clearly Scott.
Scott's the one who sort of, like the fish who like blows bubbles at his plant.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up, we get Steve returning, triumphant return of the wounded hero, and a
great little bait and switch. This I really enjoyed this because it was like. In like a series full of kind of like interdimensional crazy magical sciencey stuff, this was like, oh, it wasn't Theo, it was you. Like, and it makes a lot more sense.
It does, it really does. And I think that later on as well, there's something about Steve which makes people see their own loved ones in him. So BB-8 sees her brother in him, obviously, based on this.
Yeah.
And
based on what's happened before as well, like she clearly kind of sees the same kind of self-destructive elements, and compassion and kindness in Steve that she saw in Theo.
Exactly, but also Prairie sees Homer in Steve as well. And even later on when she's in the pool room, which we'll talk about later, when she's in the pool room, Steve is the one she lifts up, So there is this thing about Steve, and also you're coming around to him, so he's got a magnetic quality to him. Konrad.
Yeah, I mean he's not perfect, and I really didn't like him in that first season. But there's something about him, and not to put the cart before the horse, but by the end of this episode, he has got a great new haircut and a great new leather jacket, which I'm a big. Actually, he might be wearing the leather jacket in this scene. I can't remember, but he looks like a member of like a 50s biker gang by the end of this episode, which I'm very much into.
Yeah. It reminds me of, I don't know why I thought, there's two things I think of when I think of Steve being the bad boy, right? One is something which people who aren't UK listeners will have no idea what I'm talking about. Former X Factor winner Alexandra Burke had a song called The Bad Boys. The Bad Boys, right?
Yep.
There was another one, the other thing that I realized, there's an episode of Seinfeld where George pretends to be a bad boy, right? And he's like trying to get a girl. And he's wearing like a jock jacket and all. Like just like he just looks like George, looks like Jason Alexander. So he's like chewing gum, like throwing things on the floor.
Does he have like the packet of like Marlboro Reds up his sleeve and stuff like that? That's all that Steve is missing.
That's the energy that he's giving out. Like
Steve very much captures like Snake from The Simpsons energy. Like when he jumps in the ambulance at the end, I expect him to be like, all right.
Yeah, actually, and I was going to mention it later, but we'll mention it now. Steve finally caught the ambulance. He's been chasing it since the first season.
He did. He T-1000'd his way into that ambulance finally.
What the fuck are you doing? All right, okay, so go back to Nina and Hap. Nina is like, well, it is basically the OA being Nina, letting Nina come to the fore for this conversation. They're talking about how sort of she's also picking holes in Hap's story,
Yeah, she's kind of toying with him here. Yeah. I feel like she knows that he doesn't remember, and she's kind of like pointing out he doesn't remember where the booze is in his office. He doesn't remember how to drink it. The Russian dolls as a gift. It definitely feels like she's in control of this situation.
Yep, it does, and I think it's interesting. It all leads up to him taking her down to sea because. He says, what the house is, and she says, well, we know what the house is. It's a portal, and he says, well, you have no idea. And she's like, well, show me what my money is paying for, or whatever. So, is there anything else in this scene that you wanted to touch on?
I guess so. There's a couple of things that maybe prove some theories wrong, actually. So, or one thing that was interesting to me was that Nina and Hap knew the truth about the house before Pierre. Is the kind of implication of this scene, I believe, and
Well, Nina's probably talked to that tree.
Yes, but yeah, probably that would explain her decoration choices in her apartment. And I believe Hap also said, or one of them says, Pierre devised the game, which seems to imply that Pierre did design Q Symphony, which is actually at odds with what the basketball lady said back in the first episode. I believe the baller. Yeah. Because I can't remember what they said exactly, but it was something along the lines of. It wasn't. I can't remember what they said. I have to go back and listen to it. But I remember taking from that conversation that the Q Symphony kind of existed prior to Pierre Ruskin, which is interesting. I might just be misreading that situation or misreading the initial conversation in episode 1, but it narrows down what I thought the scope of Q Symphony was going to be down to. It's just something that Pierre Ruskin came up with to crowdsource solving the house.
Yeah, it was to... Yeah, okay. I think... Yeah, I know what you mean. I think we did have to conversations about that, how, like, you sort of concluded that it probably wasn't Pierre Ruskin who did it. Having said that, like, we'll never know the scope of Pierre Ruskin's storyline, so it's one of those things that...
Yeah.
It leaves us a slight bit of a strange taste in the mouth, but it's also because the show was cancelled, you know?
Yeah, well, I mean, not to get ahead of ourselves, but there was a lot of orange theories in the Theory Matrix when I was concluding it this week. It's like, don't know. So I might have saved my own bacon with that, to be honest. I hope they don't bring it back. I will point out now, if they bring back a third season, we will not revisit the score of the Theory Matrix. All right?
Yes, we will. Yes, we will. Okay, so Kareem's back in the house. Fixie does the puzzle.
I have no idea how anyone does this as quickly as they do. Like, Kareem absolutely flies through this floor.
Well, we've talked about it before. Like, when you're in the house, time doesn't move the same way. Like, he might have taken 6 months on this puzzle.
That's true. That is true. That's a fair point. But it just, I mean, the way it's depicted, it's just like clink, 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 done, and
clink, 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 jump in the pool, swim, swim, swim.
Yeah, and it's like bloody hell, Kareem.
He's like, I've done this before. Easy.
Yeah, it's like one of those.
He wrote a number on the bottom of each tile last time.
Oh, clever. Yeah, that must be what he did. He's like one of those kids who can solve like a Rubik's Cube in like 8 seconds.
Yeah. But when the Oompa Loompas came out and like took all the puzzle pieces out again,
I was gonna say that as well. Who's rearranging this puzzle? They've got a little kind of like butler, like the guy from Scary Movie 2.
My germs.
Yeah.
Take my strong hand.
Just like moving them all around with his gammy hand.
Yeah. Okay, so this is now the next thing was a moment for Renata, which I thought it was a fantastic moment. I really loved it. I loved it, like the delay delivery. Whenever it's so TV, like, but it's a real like delay.
It's like, who are you pausing for here? But
yeah. And she's also like very deliberately walking backwards. I was like, hang on.
Yeah, when she did that, I was like, is time going in reverse at the moment when she did that? I literally thought that. But yeah, it's a great moment for her character. I will say this is one of the things I didn't like that much about, I guess, the OA in general, this season 2. Renata's really undercooked as a character. Like, she gets basically nothing, and although there is emotion in this scene, I would have liked to have seen a lot more from Renata, because I feel like this scene could have worked way better if we had a bit more time with her character.
Yeah, and we know that season 3 would have taken place primarily in Scott's NDE dimension, which would imply that season 4 would be in Renata's NDE dimension. So I would imagine that in season 3 we would have seen a lot more build, because we would have had to have a lot more build up for her before we get to her NDE dimension. Yeah. It would be a bit strange to have a whole season be devoted to someone's NDE dimension whenever we don't really know much about the character,
Yeah. But I mean, even by Scott's, Scott didn't get that much this season, but yeah, I feel like, I guess they had a lot of characters to get through in that first and second season, but I feel like Rachel and Renata were kind of got the short end of the stick in terms of time spent developing them as characters.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, but I love the moment where she says, are you Homer or Dr. Roberts? He says both, in his really sort of almost like, I was gonna say pathetic, but it's not pathetic. Like, this actor has a real way of speaking which is like almost like really childlike. You know, he's able to be a man and a child at the same time.
He's very vulnerable, I think.
Yes, that's the word. Sorry, not
yeah.
pathetic. Vulnerable. Yes. Both, you know.
Pathetic girly man. Yeah.
No, I didn't say that.
No, I know. Like there is definitely a vulnerable quality to Homer.
Yeah. No, this is an alphas only podcast. Alpha Dark is what we call it.
Yeah, most alpha of all men.
Yeah, Anthony James, the most alpha of all men. All right, okay. So anyway, then she like grabs the fire extinguisher and breaks the window and says, "I will free you from yours." I don't know why she has an accent from Mars or wherever that was from, but yeah. So she smacks it up. He gets out.
Yep.
And there we go. Now, this pool room. Now that we've seen it, you can understand why I was like, "Can we give him the point for guessing the octopus in the show?"
Yeah,
this room doesn't have an octopus in it.
We'll come back to that. We will come back to that because like there's a discussion to be had there in the Theory Matrix episode. I know. Yeah, that was exactly my thinking as well. I did. I don't know if you remember. I did actually kind of like supersede that theory with another one. I think in the last episode where I said I think it was going to be full of the bodies of the people who've got the plants growing out, which is obviously what has happened here. I love that we get prior to the reveal. We get some good old-fashioned Hap euphemisms with what you see in there can be, and I quote, very challenging. It's a room full of bodies, Hap. Like, challenging doesn't really do it justice, I've got to be honest.
God.
But I love the implications of this. This sort of culmination of this both literal and symbolic relationship between the plants in the brain and the multiverse. So obviously we talked before about how the seed that it plants in the brain is a symbolic thing, basically, you know, of an awakening in the individual to the existence of the multiverse. But the literal growth of these plants, where I believe he says, I think it might be, just checking my notes, I think it might be when we return to this scene, but I'll mention it now anyway, where he says like each flower is another entry in the multiverse, which kind of implies that when the seed is planted in these people's minds by the house, every moment in their life, every kind of like inflection moment in their lives is represented by another one of these flowers.
Yeah.
And as they bloom, they are contributing these infinite possible new worlds to the multiverse, which really ties back into that kind of what the tree was saying to the OA in episode before last, where, you know, forming this endless canopy.
Yeah, no, I even love the visual of this. I think it's such an interesting way, you know, the seed within, like, the planting the seed in the brain, and then also, like, I love that Hap explained, like, you know, every brain has the multiverse within it.
Yeah, it just needs to be fertilized.
Yeah, like your brain knows the choices that were made, which changed the timelines and things. Like your brain knows them. It's really cool. It does imply, as we've said before, it does kind of imply to me that Brit Marling was originally a child in Russia, but I think they might even go further than that, maybe, and say possibly that they're going to do maybe did Pixar's Soul thing, where like maybe the inflection point of Brit and Nina was actually before they were born. Yeah,
like prior to her being born, that's the multiverse that she exists in, and you know it could be generations back for all we know. The visual of this as well, I wanted to mention. I'll say now, very brief, kind of slight spoilers for the movie Annihilation. Which did you ever see Annihilation?
Yeah, I really liked it.
Freaky, I loved Annihilation.
Freaky at the end in that room. You know
it's a great movie, really good movie. But the sort of plants growing out of the bodies to me really captured the same visual as the fate that befalls Tessa Thompson's character in that movie, where it's like. Again, spoilers for this. She ends up turning into a plant because the energies within like the kind of annihilation wall basically just end up completely changing her DNA, and it's kind of it's kind of horrific seeing like her body like literally rewrite its own DNA to turn her into a plant. But there is also kind of a serenity to it as well, and I think they do capture that really well in this. Obviously, these guys aren't conscious and accepting of what has happened to them, so it's more on the unsettling side. But there is still kind of a beauty to the way it's presented, I think.
Yeah, no, that definitely is. Okay, so I also think that there's something to be talked about here. Now, you might just pan it off as ridiculous, but the reason why a few episodes ago I mentioned the theory that Jesse potentially traveled, right, rather than just died, was because in this scene, the only body in this pool with their eyes open is Jesse.
I didn't notice that Jesse's eyes were open. That's interesting.
Yeah, very, very interesting for me as well. Like, Jesse's the only one with his eyes open, which I don't know what that implies. It's implying something, definitely. But it is interesting to me. Yeah,
I think there's. So there's a question I had, and it is actually in the as when the scene continues after a brief step away from it, but I'll mention it now. Obviously, Rachel warned the boys that only BB-8 was safe to travel, and presumably it's because the rest of the boys are here, trapped in some kind of stasis. My interpretation of this was that they were actually dead, although it's kind of later confirmed in the episode that they're more in some kind of deep coma, I guess. But would I guess what you just said there makes me wonder if they had travelled, what would have actually happened? Like, would they have just been trapped in these kind of asleep bodies? Would they have woken the bodies up? I'm not sure where I land on that, but that was kind of. But
even you could even think of it like it's not safe to go because if you travel, even if you were to wake up, you would be
you're still locked in a room with a bunch of roses coming out your ears.
Yeah, trapped in Hap's lair. So I think it's got enough in there that it's only safe for BB-8 to go makes sense to me, because I think it's also important that Michelle is also in that state. So if Buck was to travel, it wouldn't be safe for Buck to go. So it makes sense both ways in terms of being in the lair of Hap, I suppose, and then Buck would be traveling into Michelle, who's in the lair of Pierre Ruskin. Yeah. Whereas I think also like the stasis is probably what they're talking about there. But yeah, again, visually really cool. I like it. I think it's really interesting that all these young people went and actually started playing the Q Symphony game, and that's how they got to this point. So it was explained a few episodes ago. I think did Elodie explain it? I can't remember. That whenever the moments like where they meet each other in real life. So the time when Prairie met Buck, that was the time when Michelle started playing the game. Yeah,
they kind of mirrored across dimensions.
Yeah, so it almost implies to me like all these characters would have probably originally been from Michigan still. So maybe they all traveled out together to start playing the game together. You know?
Yeah,
I don't think that's implied, but it could be the way.
Yeah, I mean, I guess. I wonder if they're... No, I was going to say the journey maybe is mirrored as well, but Michelle had already gone missing by that point. Just because it would be cool if these were a bunch of kids from Michigan who like heard about Q Symphony on on Reddit or like some Discord or something and travelled across the country as the boys and BB-8 were travelling to start experimenting with the house.
Yeah, well, it could have been that way, but obviously it would have been at the exact same time. But yeah, I think there definitely would have been something like that there. But yeah. Okay, so Kareem is now in the Room of Mirrors. Really fast-forwarding through. It wasn't Kareem you're talking about in terms of getting...
Yeah, so we'll probably revisit it at the end, but I felt like with Kareem's storyline here, obviously like it does reach quite a satisfying conclusion, but I felt like with the way the house was built up with this like kind of tests of worthiness and like Kareem being in danger, he just kind of fired through the whole thing without really struggling at any point. And given it was a 45-minute episode, I was a bit like, I could have done with another 10 minutes of Kareem struggling with the house just to, really, really emphasize that sense of triumph is how you pronounce that word, when he eventually sees through the rose window. It didn't necessarily need to be here. I think this kind of like him in the mirror room, like bathed in this really atmospheric red light, was a really cool visual, and I very much enjoyed him reading T.S. Eliot on the wall, which I didn't expect to hear.
Yeah, exactly. Are we going to do a half an hour deep dive into what that means, or just say?
Well, I mean, okay, so I've got it written down here. So what is it? We shall not cease from exploration. The end of all exploration will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. So my interpretation of that is that to truly know where you call home, you must first experience like the full expanse of all realities, basically. Like this idea of being rooted in one place is can only really be justified once you have basically experienced everything and seen everything, which to me kind of seems like what Elodie might be doing or Katoon might be doing, where they are travelers, they are exploring the entire multiverse, and they will potentially eventually settle down somewhere, but the exploration is the drive that keeps these people going.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Like I said the other day about Asimov wrote a short story, and I was talking about the idea but my wife corrected me. It wasn't actually Asimov, and it was Andy Weir. It was called The Egg by Andy Weir. So if anyone wants to go read that short story, it's really good. And it's basically about a being who has to live every life of everyone on Earth ever before ascending into like a god-like thing. So I think this sort of implied to me, this T.S. Eliot quote almost implied to me, like, once you return to the start, you'll realize it's sort of built into that again for me, like the idea of they have to live all their lives. Now, I don't necessarily think Prairie's going to have to go back and be Kareem and be Steve. I don't think that's the way it is, but that's the way the short story was. I think it's like, yeah, she has to go through and experience so many different versions of herself. Yeah. So it's a similar idea, and I actually think this might be like a training or something. Like she's been selected to ascend to this more sort of higher thing. It potentially is that she's like a fallen angel, which we've talked about before. Maybe she's God itself. But I think that it's more likely that she is going through the trials to ascend to a point in which Katoon is, sort of thing. Maybe.
Well, so I've gone back and forth on this. Like it's. I've praised this show before for how broad it is in the ideas it throws out, and some of them have just not been visited again, but they're so interesting just as ideas that it doesn't really bother me. So we can cast our minds back to season 1, where Katoon refers to the OA as the original angel, and she says here that an angel is dust pressed into a diamond by the weight of this world. That's slightly later, but I'll mention it now. Dust pressed into a diamond by the weight.
We'll move on to that. That's fine.
Okay, so dust pressed into a diamond by the weight of this world. That's what an angel is. So she's the original one of that, and the other four people who were trapped by Hap have also been described as angels in season 1. Scott and Renata and Homer and Rachel. So to me, the implication is that to be a traveller, you must be an angel, and this kind of test of worthiness in the house is essentially a test of what you have given of yourself. Have you suffered enough to become an angel? And an angel, I think they don't mean it in the literal kind of like religious sense. They mean it in the sense of being able to see beyond the veil of your reality to other dimensions. So I think in that sense, like what Kareem is reading here and what you've mentioned before about it being a training, I guess, routine for people to become angels, it does definitely seem possible to me. The fact that the OA is the original is fascinating to me. Like whether there is. So in my head, I go back to the conversation they had with that cop's wife who had ALS, I think, that Homer and Prairie cured at the end of season 1, and she says that she spoke to a little girl who told her to wait for Prairie in her dreams, and the way I imagine it is that Prairie was the first person to be awoken, or the first being, I guess, to be, because we're beyond the scope of like kind of humanity here, the first being to be awoken in the way that all these people in the pool was awoken. So she essentially started the multiverse, and that's why she's considered to be the original. And from that, everything else has blossomed. And that's what. So that little girl who spoke to that cop's wife was young OA at the point where the multiverse first kind of came to be. And obviously, for that woman, it was like 50 years ago. But for the OA, it was at the beginning of time, essentially.
Yeah, and I think that's great. I think I probably agree with you there that she is the, for want of a better term, the origin.
Yeah.
Obviously the origin. She's where all this splitting maybe began. And therefore you get into a position where potentially the show could have ended in the same way as Tenet did, the film Tenet. Spoilers for Tenet for the next 30 seconds. So at the end of Tenet, Robert Pattinson's character, Neil, says to the protagonist, played by John David Washington, we met a long time ago, and it's very much implied that John David Washington's character, the protagonist, started the whole time travel bureaus and everything. He started the whole thing. He went back.
He hasn't done it yet.
He hasn't done it yet, but he'll go back in time and do it. So the idea, it's very similar to this. Your idea here that you had is that she's the original. She'll go through the whole thing, and then she'll realize actually that she started the whole thing, and perhaps even in the future she'll do things to ensure it happens.
Yeah, I think that is very. It's so hard to analyze where the narrative of this is going to go because it's so mind blowing and broad. But I think if I were going to try and write something like this, that's where I would go with it. Is her realizing, oh, I did all of this, and I just haven't done it yet, or I've forgotten that I did it. I think it would be more interesting if she got to the end and it was like, oh, this is the point where I create the multiverse. It makes me sad talking about that stuff because it would have been so interesting to see where they went with it.
I mean, this show is a grower, Konrad. Like, you can imagine how much more, you are hooked into season 2 than season 1. You can imagine how good it would have got just going forward with these crazy ideas. So, yeah, I agree. There is a thing, like, there's a couple of mistakes they made in the first season, which is kind of now okay because of where they went with the show. Like, the fact that the OA is a TV show within the universe, right?
Yeah.
Which we'll cover extensively, hang on for that. But I just thought I don't want to forget about it. In the first season, there was a number of continuity mistakes, as well as that there was times in the glass in Hap's basement where you could actually see cameramen sometimes because it was so hard. It was so hard to film with the glass.
They've got a perfect ready-made excuse for any of those.
Yeah, exactly. It's like they finished season 1. They're like, oh my god, you can see cameramen. There's continuity mistakes. What do we do? Let's just make it a TV show in the show, and no one.
You're a
will care.
genius.
Yeah, exactly. All right, okay, so BB-8 and the boys make it to the pool room as well.
Yeah.
BB-8 mentions, you're here, Steve. Before we actually see all the bodies, who they are, BB-8 actually mentions that they're in the room. So it sort of gives us a little clue just before we see it. And they're sort of following Prairie around, and they say Prairie's left now. She's not here anymore. So what did you think of this, sort of following her through?
So I love the sort of mirrored narrative here, just to kind of amplify the emotion of the scenes, and getting them to play off one another. So like right at the beginning of the alt Treasure Island, or Dimension 1, I guess, Treasure Island, they I think BB-8 is the one who says she's in here and so are you, and looks at Steve, and then it cuts back and Prairie finds OA rather finds Steve's body in the pool. I think it's a really cool way of doubling down on where these two plot lines are going, and I love how they're kind of dovetailing together as the season ends, and will eventually end up in the same place. I'm trying to think if there's anything else.
Well, there's something else. There's something else that I wanted to mention, which we just missed a little bit back, and it's the moment where Prairie says, "Oh my god, it's Scott," and then Hap's like, "Oh, Prairie, thank God," right? So the way that when he's like relieved that it's Prairie, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's like, Prairie, thank God. There's the way that reads on the surface. There's a surface reading, and then there's a deeper reading for me. The surface reading there is way you would almost naturally take it is that Hap's glad that he hasn't been found out, right? He's glad that actually, oh, thank God, I'm not explaining this to Nina. Thank God I'm not found out. For me, the actual real meaning of why he reacts like that is, oh, thank God, Prairie hasn't traveled away without me.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely my read as well. These two are indelibly linked to each other. I think I agree with what Elodie told the OA in that respect, but I think perhaps link to Prairie is much more. He's the one who's like desperate to maintain the link, whereas like OA is trying to break it all the time but failing because she's kind of unwittingly making decisions that brings her closer to him. Whereas I think he is desperate to take her with him at the end of this episode and doesn't really want to deal with Nina.
Yep. I think I agree. I just thought that was interesting, like sort of double read as well. So Kareem is in the water swimming.
Goes for a swim. Doesn't seem that concerned about poisonous gas anymore as well.
Well, he's just like, he's in for a penny, in for a pound at this point.
He's just like, whatever.
Yeah. I'm getting to that rose window because he's got to find where Michelle is, where she really is. Which we said in the last episode is still funny. The idea that the granny just didn't help him out at all.
I love that. That's great. That granny is the biggest bad guy in the whole series. It's like, for God's sake, granny. It's like watching your grandparents try to use email or something. They're just like struggling with basic communication skills.
Yeah. All right. So Hap's been busy.
Yes,
he very busy.
Oh, actually, I will say one thing first before we get to this, just as a brief throwaway. Do you know what OA said in Russian? Like when they kind of, before they leave the room, the light behind her kind of blooms and she begins to look a bit angelic. And before she says "we have faith," she says something in Russian, and it didn't say in the subtitles.
Yeah, my Russian is a bit rusty, Konrad. I don't know what she said.
Fine. Well, okay. Russian listeners, get in touch and let us know, because I was like, I wish I knew what she said then, because it sounds like it was probably important. But yes, Hap has been busy. I'm not sure how Hap built these, to be honest.
He commissioned them to be built. I'm sure he's got a lot of money.
Well, you just go to the local robot factory and be like...
They're in San Francisco.
That is true. If it was going to be anywhere, it would be San Francisco that they could build these, but... I don't know. I was a bit like, okay, this is a cool visual and I like it, so I'm going to give you a free pass on this one, OA. But it seems a little implausible to me that in the space of like a week, Hap was able to get like 5 robots.
Okay, so there's two possibilities. One is he opened up the little guy, saw it, and then was like, okay, I'm going to build these, but huge. The other thing,
in a week.
I don't really understand why he built them huge. The other read to it is, which I'm sure a lot of people in the comments are screaming at us, they were already there. And Hap seeing the little cube made him realize that's what they were.
Yeah, I guess I could buy that. As an
Did he just find the remote under the cushion in the couch?
Yeah, I just loved it. As soon as I saw the ornaments on the resting on their points in the garden, I was like, those look like the little robot guys. And then they started moving, and I was like, what is this a Michael Bay like Transformers movie here? And I was just like as they start like doing the fucking movements around her. It was so dumb, but I mean, I loved it as well. They look great, and it was a worthy payoff as the episode reaches its head.
Yeah. I think that there might be something to the idea that they were already there, but obviously we'll never know. We'll never know.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
So the boys in BBA actually, I can say the boys in BBA, Angie's there now too.
Angie's one of the boys, I guess.
She's an honorary boy now.
Yeah, she's in the boys.
The Crestwood Five, I suppose. Well, they're in like sort of the Pentagon shape. Call it a circle, but you all know it's not a circle unless you have infinite people. So. It's a crest. It's a pentagon shape. They're sort of standing around where the robots are.
Yeah.
It did make me think. Oh, hang on. Are the robots? Can they only move if someone in a different reality is doing the movements in the same spot as the robots? But then because I watched it before, obviously I've seen it before. But then when I watched it again, I was like, oh no, the robots start moving before them. So no, that's just nonsense. But yeah, it still is a cool idea. So they start going, and then they start moving. BBA's like, we have to move now. Now there's a couple of clips between here. So what I think I'll do is I will stay in the Treasure Island moments before I go to Kareem. Is that all right?
Okay. Yeah, that sounds good.
So Hap, the big payoff to all his disgusting habits with putting things in his mouth, he puts the pedal in his mouth
once again,
and he's saying, "I'm going to take you somewhere where everyone calls you OA, but you don't." Yeah. Everyone knows you as OA, but you don't, which is obviously implying our universe in a way.
Yeah. Although I don't think that's true. Like, if I saw Britt Marling on the street, I wouldn't be like, OA! I'd be like, you're Britt Marling, the actress and writer and producer.
But you know what it means. Like, you still, like, see her as the OA as well in some way.
Yeah, I guess so.
You know,
I like this idea that swallowing part of one of the flowers for the relevant multiverse or dimension is like kind of inputting GPS coordinates in your car or something. Just like, there you go, pop that in there. Now we're off.
USB 4.0. But yeah, does that exist yet? USB 4.0? Because I might have to go to 5 to make that joke.
I don't think it does yet.
Ah, well, there we go. There it is. USB 4.0. So they go. So he puts it in the mouth, but then all of a sudden, end of the series. You know
Clutch.
that we got to have a Prairie and Homer moment. It's the end of the series. So in comes Homer. I remember everything. Bang.
Yep. Classic Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade moment. Sean Connery gets shot by the Nazi, and now Prairie has to travel because like Homer's going to die in that body if she doesn't. It's a classic dramatic device, and I very much enjoyed it. Also, maybe if you are going to punch like the murderous doctor who has kidnapped you multiple times and clearly has a room full of bodies downstairs, maybe make sure he doesn't have a gun on him before you turn your back on him. That's like, that would be my advice to Homer for next time round.
Like literally, Homer, you could have, like, if you just kept beating him, he could have actually stopped him traveling too. Like,
you could have killed him, like if you really wanted to, or at the very least subdued him rather than just one punch and now I'm gonna hug my girlfriend.
Yeah, and I think like in this world of like traveling all over these multiverses and like people being locked in the cells underneath the ground and then growing plants out of people's ears, I think I wouldn't argue if Homer was just like, you know what, I'm just gonna kill this guy. Like I don't think I would have argued with that.
I would call this justifiable homicide. If I was in a court of law, I'd be like, you know what, he probably deserves it.
Yeah, so I think if I would have advocated there for Homer just to keep beating his face. Best case scenario, Hap moves away. Best case scenario, he dies. Best case scenario, he moves away and they get to stay there and they drive off into the San Francisco countryside. All right, so now we're into Kareem.
Okay.
Kareem is at the rose window.
Yep.
He opens it up.
Yes.
Obviously, the first thing he sees is Prairie hovering.
Ascending, yeah. Very angelic looking.
She actually physically ascended into the air.
Yeah.
Okay.
Heavily backlit.
So what were you thinking when this first happened? Were you thinking like, okay, so the idea is through the rose window, like you see Prairie, so obviously the OA, so like she's the most important thing. You obviously didn't know it was going to go into a second layer, but when this first happened, were you like, oh, okay, so OA is really important? Was that a little bit anticlimactic to you?
What, the fact that he was seeing the OA rather
like
than
let's say in that moment where he saw the OA, right, and you didn't know it was going to go on to the second part where you see like the real world. If it was just her hovering, did you have an initial reaction of being like, oh, okay, that's what it is?
No, I think I expected it to be that because like Kareem's storyline up until this point felt like I didn't really know where it was going. Obviously, he was going to the rose window, but in terms of like how it was going to tie into the narrative of the rest of the episode, I was a bit like, I don't really know what's happening here. And then when that stuff was going on with Prairie and Homer, with OA and Homer and Hap outside Treasure Island, I was like, okay, that is what he's going to see initially, because otherwise, how is this tying into anything? And it's kind of, I thought it worked really well as a way to give us I guess like an audience's eye view of the events that unfold in the other dimension. But my initial read was kind of, I wouldn't say disappointed, because I expected them to hold that viewpoint to show us everything that was going to happen after that.
Okay, yeah, just to show us the travel that happens after.
Yeah.
So, Prairie, or the OA ascends up.
Yep.
In the moment that she travels, she is transported into the body of Britt Marling on the set of the OA.
Yep.
And she falls from the wires, cracks her head on the concrete underneath.
Yeah. And
we are now in what could be considered the real world. It's slightly different than the real world, because Jason Isaacs is not married to Britt Marling in real life, but they are, so they're putting in a couple of differences there. But it's pretty much, for all intents and purposes, our world. They are in our world. They have been making the show the OA. Your prediction is correct. What did you think of this?
I was pretty happy about that. As soon as I saw, like the camera crane kind of pulling away, I was like, nailed it. There we go. And as we know, the real world is shot in cinematic widescreen, so we see our aspect ratio change here.
Also, did they still have the grainy camera? It was slightly grainy, I felt.
Yeah, I didn't actually do this, and I'm annoyed with myself. I wanted to go back and find the airplane footage, because I think that was in a different aspect ratio to this, and also was shot with like a film grain on it, like it was shot on a handheld camera.
It was really, really grainy, yeah.
So I think this is a different thing. Maybe I'm wrong. I need to revisit that, but it definitely felt like it looked different to me.
It looks different, but I think it's personally, Konrad, I think that if you were going to actually be in this universe for the whole of season 3, you couldn't have that grainy, shitty camera. So I think what they do,
yeah.
I think there is a slight bit of grain in this footage, but I think it's sort of transitioning into a normal, look.
Yeah, something that's actually like good to look at for a whole season of television. I mean, this is great though. This was a great moment. I love seeing Jason Isaacs kind of doing Hap as Jason Isaacs. Getting Britt Marling's name wrong, and but doing it in an English accent. And I'm pretty sure, like, Jason Isaacs does have quite a posh accent. I think he grew up in Liverpool, but he doesn't have much of an accent anymore. He's got quite a sort of posh southern accent now. But even so, I think he was putting on a bit of an accent for this, which I was like, why are you doing that, Jason Isaacs? Like, you are English.
He was putting on more of almost like a Cockney, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was a bit more
Jason Isaacs.
Yeah, a bit more rough and ready than Jason Isaacs, who's very much an actor kind of voice.
I think they probably made him do it because it's like it's a real contrast to what he was as Hap. It's like maybe they did it for a few takes where he just went, "I'm Jason Isaacs," and it's like it's not enough. It's not enough. Can you change it? Because even the woman who was next to him whenever he was like Prairie, and she was like, "Britt, are you alright, Britt?" It was like it was almost so London that it was
like you followed a fucking set of EastEnders here.
It was but you know what I mean by when I say this. It was so London that it was almost Australian.
Yeah,
you know,
you mag. That's what. That's what I wanted to call someone a mag.
What are you doing, Britt? It's like it's just absolutely ridiculous. But yeah, so was
this their set? That's what I want, because obviously that scene outside wasn't shot on a set. I'm almost certain.
No,
of that.
This is all fake. You
think this is all fake? Okay, because it does actually look. It would be really fun if they did use like their interior, like film lot sets to film some of this
from the boat. You mean?
The
boat one. Potentially, the boat could have been. I'm sure the boat was like a set that could like maybe split apart a bit, take walls off and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think for the most part, like the garden part where they're in like the little Treasure Island garden part.
Yeah, that's definitely not real. Like they 100% shot that outside, because that would be so much work to make this look like that.
Yeah, like so I'm pretty sure that they even made everything a little smaller to really emphasize that this is on a set. I think that it was a particular stylistic choice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so to be honest with you, this moment here is why I wanted to do the OA on this podcast, because this is such a mind-blowing. Even if you predict it, it's still like, whoa, what are they actually going to do in this next season?
Yeah, it's just the gloves are just off at this point.
Yeah.
Like if you can literally step through the fourth wall and say, oh, this TV show that you are watching is one of the dimensions that we are now going to travel to. You can do anything in the next. We joked about season 4 being, or I guess it was OA's,
season 5.
Yeah, so it'd be season 5 being like some shitty 60s Star Trek episode where they're like going around planets having sex with Martian women or something. But they could do it. Like that's no more ridiculous than what they've just done here. Like bearing in mind that the first episode of this show starts with a blind girl. Or blind woman, excuse me, who has been kidnapped for 7 years, coming back to her family, and there being some, weird stuff with like her memory and her wanting to tell and her sight's back, and her wanting to tell the story of her kidnapping, to the end of the second season, where we have had not one but 2 additional dimensions, one of which is the dimension that we, the audience, are watching the show happen in. It's just like, I mean. I know we said this a lot, and I don't want to come across as too negative, but I don't understand how you watch this as like a Netflix executive and be like, "I'll cancel it."
Yeah, that's why I'm saying to you, I have a hope in my heart.
I mean, I do too, but I don't.
Hap would want the show cancelled, wouldn't he?
Yeah.
Like, wouldn't he? Like,
he would. That's true.
And whenever asked, when Zalbot Monglich was asked recently, "Do you see a way for the show to continue in the future?" He said yes. So
we're taking it to Broadway.
We're taking it to no, maybe a graphic novel or something. I'd be happy just even with a novel. Like anyway,
just anything.
I think this show, I think they sort of. Maybe they shouldn't have had her awakening herself when she was very, very clearly still young. Because in my personal opinion, I would still watch this even if they had to wait 20 years to make the next season. And maybe Brit was asleep the whole time. She didn't realize she was prairie for 20 years. You know.
I mean, they've got that. That is one of the benefits of the kind of dimensional and time travel based narrative that they're telling here, is that unlike something like Firefly, where eventually the cast just got too old and it was like, you couldn't really do it anymore because some of the cast aren't alive anymore and it's everyone's getting a bit old. In this, it doesn't really matter because you just go to another dimension where everyone was born 30 years earlier and it's like, I don't know, Steve's 50 now, whatever.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so yeah, I just really there's just something. Every time it happens where they're like, it's gonna, there's gonna be an announcement in a month, I do get a little excited, even though I know I shouldn't. But there's something deep within me that just doesn't feel like this story is told. There's something deep within me that tells me we will see another bit of this story.
It'd be crazy not to, in some way. It seems very popular. I mean, the subreddit has tens of thousands of subscribers. Yeah.
I think it gets to the point where releasing a season 3 of the OA, like the OA coming back, will get you as much new subscribers as the OA as like a first new show coming out. I think eventually the news around the OA being renewed will be big enough that it will justify the decision.
Yeah, I hope so. And as you say, maybe that's the ploy. Maybe they cancelled it and they've been working on it this whole time, and then they can say, it's coming back and it's out now, and then and do it that way. That's the dream. If it doesn't, I mean, this is it's a frustrating conclusion. If this is truly the end, because nothing is resolved really. It's so open ended. In a way, I kind of love that because, like we're doing here, the possibilities are just endless with what this show could have gone on to do. We can theorize to our heart's content about where it might have gone, and I think we're right to do so because it's so open ended. But in terms of it's a very good cliffhanger for another season of television. It's not particularly satisfying as the end of a TV show.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to say now, guys. Remember before we started the OA. We said that Konrad would be predicting what would happen in season 3, 4, and 5, and that would be his. That would be his. It would be canon. I think I'm gonna have a think about it too. We'll probably talk about it together and sort of both agree what we think will happen. But next week on the Theory Matrix episode, we'll carve out a bit of time to do that as well. We do have a question today about that. We're going to leave that question till next week. Because I think I'll give Konrad a week to think about where he thinks it would have went. So let's talk about the Buck/Michelle stuff here quickly. So
yeah, this is nuts.
This sort of implies that, as we said in the last episode, Michelle was within Ian Alexander's mind this whole time.
Yeah. Well, okay, that's interesting actually, because that was not my read of it. That makes more sense actually, because when I watched it, I was like, oh shit, Ian Alexander has just been transported into the vacant body of Michelle. Well,
I think that probably is the case, but you think about it, right? Michelle looked through the rose window, maybe even touched it, and transported through to that reality. So both Michelle and Ian Alexander are in Ian Alexander's body. So my idea is now that when he touches Kareem's hand or whatever he did, I think maybe both of them, or one of them or both of them. I wouldn't be surprised if it was both Michelle and Ian Alexander went, or just Michelle. But I think they're definitely Michelle's consciousness was within Ian Alexander.
Like Michelle, like the look on Michelle's face when she woke up wasn't one of like, shit, I'm in the wrong body. It was, like waking up from a bad dream. Like she seemed happy and glad to see her grandmother. And I feel like if Ian was dominant in there, it wouldn't have been that reaction. So I think that makes more sense than what my initial read of it was. But that would be a great way to stay in the second dimension, actually, if Ian got zapped over there as well, and they'd be like, shit, we need to get Ian back from...
that would be, honestly, Konrad, they've went quite daring with the portrayal of trans characters in the show already, as we spoke about. Can you imagine in season 3 if the storyline of Michelle was that Ian was within Michelle and was eventually emerging?
Talk about like a narrative and like a thematic way of discussing and exploring like body dysmorphia in a trans character. Like, what better way to do it than to literally have two people within yourself, one of whom is a man, trying to break out of this female presenting body.
Yeah, that's really interesting, isn't it? I wonder if that's where they were going to go.
That would have been great. I would have loved them for doing that, because I've said it before, I'll say it again. There aren't enough trans characters, full stop. And like, I don't think I always hate the argument that, and it's normally used for like female characters, but I think it applies to any kind of non-white guy character. They're like, we've got to they've got to be good characters, to have them. And I'm always like, that doesn't apply to white guys. It shouldn't have to apply to gay characters or trans characters. Like, you can have shitty trans characters as well. But this is an absolutely great one, and I would have loved to have seen them explore it further.
Yeah, there's also the really weird thing as well for me of like, obviously it probably took a lot for Ian Alexander to play the role of Michelle, as we've talked about before. So this idea is that the season's over now, and now like he's giving Michelle out, letting Michelle out of the body again. It's like this idea of like, okay, that was uncomfortable. I didn't, get out of here now. And Michelle is like back into her body, and it's like now Ian Alexander's back to himself again. It could be that as well, but I think it'd be really interesting if Ian Alexander did travel. Like if an actor from our world traveled into the body of a character in the fictional show they were creating, I would love, like, that would be amazing.
Great. That'd be so good. I've got thoughts about Steve as well.
Yeah. Okay. So Danny Zuko arrives.
I imagine him.
That was Vic Disco. That was Vic Disco.
That is exactly what it is. Like, I expected him to like jump in and be like, "Oh," and like kind of comb his hair back as he gets in. Fucking rolled up beside the ambulance on his chopper. I like this Steve. I got a lot of time for this Steve. I don't want to give too much away if we're going to be talking next week about theories about where it's going to go. But the Hello Hap to me implies that this Steve knows Hap already in some way. Like, there is a pre-existing relationship in this dimension between these two. Because if this was our Steve, I feel like he would have jumped in that ambulance.
Very much. This is our Steve. 100%.
Do you think?
Yeah.
I didn't think he would be saying Hello Hap. I think he'd be jumping on him.
Come on, we know Steve. Steve's very level-headed, very cool, calm, and collected.
He'd be parkouring his way into the fucking ambulance and karate kicking Hap out onto the road. I think there's something here that implies a pre-existing relationship. I think,
Konrad, I'm going to be honest with you, right? I think you've undone a lot of great work you've done in this episode so far by having that opinion.
Listen, so like, Danny Zuko Steve fans, get in touch. Danny Zuko Steve is the bad guy of season 3. You heard it here first.
I mean, that would be fantastic. Imagine he has his mate. What was his name? Crater Face.
Oh,
Crater Face.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
The Crater Face is popping along next to him.
This is the Terminator 1 Steve. We've had the Terminator 2 Steve. Like, this is the Terminator 1 Steve, where he's gonna go and kill Bill Paxton and rip his heart out, and then.
I think I don't know, like.
When he's running after the ambulance, like, it's obviously our Steve. Like, the panic in his face, like, that's obviously our Steve. But the fact that he isn't just immediately beating the shit out of Hap when he gets into that ambulance makes me think there's something else in this character that's stopping him from doing that.
Okay, you've saved yourself a little bit there, Konrad. I think that potentially, yes, I don't think there's a pre-existing knowledge of Hap in the actor who plays Steve. Like, there is obviously a pre-existing knowledge that Jason Isaac plays a character called Hap, but I think the actor who plays Steve is now maybe possibly amalgamated with Steve, so therefore he knows Jason Isaacs as well as Hap as Steve, so maybe that's why he doesn't jump on him. I don't think it's that there's a pre-existing relationship between the actor who plays Steve and the character of Hap, in that knowing the character of Hap is a real thing. No way.
Jason Isaacs and the actor who plays Steve are in a biker gang in this universe. That's my call.
Yeah, Patrick Gibson is his name.
Oh, great.
Yeah, maybe he's the OA. He's what
honestly barely anyone has gone through like any kind of wardrobe changes or significant kind of appearance changes in this, apart from me and Alexander. And I guess Britt Marling to a certain extent, like the Nina Prairie stuff is a bit different. But I love that he's just like, right, in this episode, I'm going to be a dickhead high school parkour, or in this season, I'm going to be a dickhead parkour high school guy. Then I'm going to shave my head, and then I'm going to turn up as like a 50s greaser in a biker gang with Jason Isaacs.
But what I love about that is they go to the actor, right? They go to Patrick Gibson, and they're like, right, okay, so you're going to be Steve, but within your own body. Like, you're going to be in Patrick Gibson's body. And he's like, right, okay, so I'll just wear, like, my normal clothes. Oh, no. We're going to have you...
No, this is his normal clothes. I know. This is his normal clothes. I refuse to accept that this isn't how he dresses and looks normally. He turns up to set with a toothpick in his mouth, flicks it at, like the what they call, the people who handle, like, catering and stuff on set. And
yeah.
Tells them to, like, give me a coffee.
The runners,
yeah.
That's who he is.
Marlboro. Yeah, this is in my mind. This is what this actor is like, and I'm very much about it.
Like, we've been talking how great it is, Ian Alexander's performance as like playing Michelle, and how difficult that was. Like, to be such an alpha as Patrick Gibson with his Danny Zuko hair and his leather jacket, with his
and he's still got the parkour in him as well.
Exactly. But being able to go into set and then completely change who you are and become Steve, he's a fantastic actor. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I can't wait to see more of this actor in other things. I hope he never changes.
He's like Dave Bautista, if Dave Bautista could actually pretend to be someone else.
Yeah, rather than a nice man, which is what Dave Bautista always tends to be. Actually, Drax. He does Drax. Drax isn't that nice, but the rest of the time he plays like kind of a soft-spoken, nice man who also just happens to be like 260 pounds of muscle.
Yeah. Okay, before we go into the roundup, I wanted to get your thoughts on the ending credit music. Like, it goes into Britt Marling's face, and then it, like, just in case anyone didn't know the actress's name, because it's possible they wouldn't, right? The credits start and Britt Marling's name comes up first. But the music is like it's a really weird little scatty almost thing. What did you think of the tone of it? Do you remember it?
To be honest, I didn't take that much note of the ending music.
Okay, well, something to go back and listen to, because it's a real change of tone. Like, it's like you've just had this emotional moment of like Danny Zuko running up, going "Hello, Hap," and then it goes into Britt's face, and then there's like real, like, I don't know how you would describe it. It's like really like chirpy.
It's like jazz.
Yeah, well, I don't know. Like, I don't know how to describe it. It's like real chirpy, happy, a little scatty. It's really interesting. So go back and listen to that, because
I will check that out. Yeah, I mean, I'd like to be honest with stuff like that. For me to really notice like ending music, it has to be like either full on licensed music or very clearly like influenced by a certain genre, like a WandaVision kind of thing, where it does like the Malcolm in the Middle episode, and it's like, okay, that's what we're doing here. That would have been great, actually, if they'd have done like a Malcolm in the Middle style They Might Be Giants theme song at the end. I'd been very much into that.
You know, while we're on Malcolm in the Middle, right? I used to argue with my brother. My brothers and I used to argue all the time. Do you know in the opening credits of Malcolm in the Middle, it shows Bret Hart doing the figure four? Not the figure four, the
sharpshooter.
The sharpshooter on someone, right? Now, at that time, when I was young, Bret Hart, when I started watching wrestling, Bret Hart had just left, right? Yeah. So I didn't really know Bret Hart that much. And we were watching it, and because like of the distortion in the opening credits, for the longest time, we thought that was Kane. Like, because of his pink, we thought that the
Kane
pink was...
pink face.
No. Like, the pink, we thought it was red because of the distortion of the
colours.
I
see. Okay, yeah.
So, like, we were like... And then eventually, like, my older brother found out that it was Bret Hart. And, like, we used to argue all the time. Like, I was, like, what, like 7 years old or so, 8 years old? I didn't actually care about looking it up. But my brother was like, that's Bret Hart, actually. And me and my other brother were like, no, it's not! It's Kane, all right?
Yeah. Kane, when he wrestled Goldberg that time.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it's Goldberg he's doing it too. I can't remember. It's been a while since I've seen that.
Jeez, if we couldn't tell it wasn't Bret Hart, we're not going to tell it's Goldberg.
Yeah, well, it could have been Steve Austin.
Kane and Steve Austin.
Yeah.
Talk about alternate realities.
Can you imagine? There could be one where they're in a wrestling company. They could go. I tell you what they could do with this show. We'll talk about this next week.
Birds of Freedom or something.
But they could. Well, Glow got cancelled recently, and they could do a season where they go to the Glow universe and get involved in pro wrestling, which I'd very much be into.
That's so interesting because you're right. They could literally go to any TV show's universe.
Any other Netflix show.
Just show up at Central Perk for a cup of tea, you know?
Or show up in Stranger Things.
Yes. Oh, it's been mentioned. It's been mentioned.
Speak it into existence.
Yeah, exactly. Right, okay. Let's go into the breakdown then.
Okay,
no, sorry. We're already in the breakdown. I've done that twice in the last few weeks. Let's get into the roundup.
Yeah, let's do that also.
IMDb rating 9.3. I think this is the highest of any episode in the whole show.
I don't think I agree with that. I think the big reveals are really cool. There's a lot of really good stuff in this episode, but I think you have to judge it on the fact that we're not getting any more after it. Although that's a bit unfair. So I'd say it's probably still in the 8s. It's still a good episode, definitely.
We have talked before about the fact that the ending is what sells people on something. So, you can imagine people when they were going back to... No one was rating this on IMDb after every episode. They were rating the whole season at the end, right?
Yeah.
So, obviously, they're like, oh, overview. That's the one we found out it was in our world. 9, 10, that's why it happened.
I think that there are a couple of episodes earlier in this season that spring to mind. I think it was either episode 3 or 4, where it was just crazy stuff getting revealed left, right, and centre. And I think that's probably the best episode. I can't remember the name of it now, but that's probably the best episode of this season. So I think this is still really good.
The one with Old Knight. Was that the one with Old Knight?
Yeah, I think the one with Old Knight. That would have been episode 5?
4, I think.
4, yeah. So I think that's probably the best episode just because so much happened. This is still really good. I still enjoyed a lot of it. I'm really, really... Well, I would be really looking forward to what they do next. I think it's probably in kind of the mid-8s, though, I would put this.
Cool. No problem at all. I think we'll probably leave the roundup there and get into the questions because I don't want to starve next week of content. So because next week we are going to be doing the Theory Matrix. We're going to be talking about what would have happened next, we think. I'm going to mention a couple of times the show nearly came back, and I'm also going to mention the current thoughts on when the show's coming back in the fan community too.
Yeah, that sounds cool.
Yeah, so we'll just get into the questions. Conrad, what do you think?
Yeah, let's do it.
A stranger from the outside.
Okay, guys, if you want to ask Konrad a question, you can ask him in the comments underneath the videos. Now, obviously, next week we're doing the Theory Matrix, so there's no questions for next week. But the week after that, you can actually, in a strange turn of events, so for next week, you can actually ask Emmett questions about Dark Season 1 towards Dark Season 2. Because next week we're doing the Konrad Theory Matrix episode for the OA. After that, we're going to be doing Emmett Season 1. So he's gonna binge the whole of Season 1. We're going to talk to him about it. Where does he think it's going? And then you can ask him questions about that. And then we're going to do Season 2 the week after and Season 3 the week after that. So, interesting. It'll be questions for Emmett for the next 3 weeks. All right. And we also are going to be doing Westworld next, we're pretty sure. So we'll lock that in now. We're doing Westworld next.
Yeah. We'll be rooting and tooting our way to your ears as robot cowboys.
Yeah, and I think that don't let where Westworld has gone or went dictate whether you think it's good for us to do. Just remember how good that first season was, and then you'll hear our thoughts on the rest of it as we go, because there is some fantastic stuff. Disclaimer again, I think Konrad has seen the first episode or 2, but
yeah, I think I saw the first 2, but I know. What do I know? Ed Harris is in it. There's a guy in black, and James
one
Marsden?
of the McPoyles. What? Yeah, he's in it.
Yeah, and the McPoyles.
One of the McPoyle guys.
Yeah, one of the McPoyles is in it. And Anthony Hopkins is an old man who makes robots.
I think it's going to be one of those things where the first 2 episodes, you don't really remember much about it, but you kind of know, so you'll remember it as you watch it, and then after the second episode, it'll obviously just be all fresh to you. So, looking forward to that. All right, guys. So, a couple of questions here. One from Marvin says, first of all, how dare you predict the ending correctly?
Wasn't Marvin the question asker last week who asked me to guess where I thought the show was going to end?
Well, there you go.
There you go. Yeah.
Obviously, Marvin didn't want you to get it right.
Yeah. I mean, it was. I think that they laid the track in front of us for that one. there was enough there to get it. I think, but I think you had to maybe have the idea planted in your mind by that early change in aspect ratio for when they do the plane sequence.
Yeah, like little clues like that. Whenever you're going to be talking about it on a podcast, are very easy to spot, aren't they?
Yeah.
Okay, so we'll take some of the credit away from Konrad. It's not that good. So second of all, is this literally our world, or is it just a very similar one? Obviously, it's a very similar one because Jason Isaacs isn't married to Britt Marling, but I think for all intents and purposes, it has to be viewed as our world. I think, obviously, where they were going with the story needed Jason Isaacs and and Britt Marling to be very connected, in my opinion. But
and I think that, like, it would be very weird if they pulled this reveal and then, like, halfway through the next season they were like, actually, this isn't quite the real world. There's another world where the OA is being filmed as a TV show, and in that one, Britt Marling is just married to whoever she's married to, or not married, as the case may be. So I think, this is the real world. I think we're safe to make that assumption at this point.
Yeah, exactly. So it's interesting as well. I found that Hap seems to be in tune with Jason Isaacs straight away. You know,
because they're in league together.
Oh
wait, no, Hap and Jason Isaacs. Sorry, I was talking about Steve.
Patrick Gibson's in league, but
they're in a biker gang together. Yeah, that is true. That's like so. That's kind of the interesting thing about this episode is like when earlier in the episode when Nina is kind of toying with Hap by pointing out all this stuff that he doesn't remember. I feel like she's kind of pointing out that OA has perfect control over which part of her personality is kind of dominant at any given time, whereas Hap clearly doesn't have the memories of Dr. Percy available to him. So it is interesting that he lands in this body and seems to immediately maybe have more of that equilibrium, like whether it's just a case of he's experienced jumping a couple of times now, so he's getting better at not just suppressing the voice inside of the body that he's landing in.
Potentially, but it also might just be that Jason Isaacs is a stronger person than Dr. Percy.
Yeah, it could be that.
Okay, then Marvin asks another question. What's the next podcast show, and why is it Westworld?
I like cowboys.
Yeah, cowboys. Well, you can't beat cowboys.
Yeah, I do like a cowboy.
Yeah, exactly. Guys, I might put a poll up on the channel where, like, I'm thinking of changing every time we do a different show, changing the After Dark podcast theme, and I'm thinking of making it like real rootin' tootin' for Westworld. So let me know.
Make it Kid Rock for the next one, please.
Yeah, let me know whether that's a good idea. I'll put a poll up, and then if you want to put suggestions about what things I can put in the intro for Westworld, like I've got about a month to do it at this point, so that's a lot of time.
Recommend Kid Rock, please.
Yeah, nothing. There's going to be nothing licensed, but we could definitely do something.
He'd be all right with it. We'll get in touch.
Well, to be honest with you, the actual Culture Cave theme itself would be a great one for it, but we can't use that because that's our Culture Cave theme. So, all right, so I'll start thinking about it, guys, and you can put comments under this video for it, or you could also put comments under I'll put a poll up on the YouTube channel.
Uncle Cracker, that's another one.
Follow me, everything is all right. Such a good song.
It's a great song.
Okay,
he did X-Pac's theme music.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, do you not remember when he was in X Factor with Just Incredible and Albert? And like he had like the X Factor music started with Uncle Cracker. It was awful. Awful music.
No, I cannot remember that at all. although I was teaching a class the other day and one of my pupils just randomly from the other side of the room, I heard them go, oh, you didn't know?
A 16-year-old's into the New Age Outlaws.
And I was like, and I, all the fellas around him were like, "What are you talking about?" And I across the room went, "Road Dogg." He's like, "Yeah, so you get it."
That's great. Well done to that young man.
Okay, so Bill Ross says, "So I guess we found out that Hap was doing in the garage in his spare time, or maybe they're like dehydrated fruit and only had to water them to make them grow." Well, I think that. Well, maybe they are in water actually. So he's probably dumping fertilizer or like plant.
It's like
those little sachets of plant food you get with flowers. He's putting them in the water.
Yeah. I mean, it's like everyone during these lockdowns got really into baking. This is what Hap got into is gardening from people.
I just will say, right? I bake sometimes. Like I'm not an avid baker. I wouldn't call it a hobby of mine, but I can bake when I want to. And I needed to make my son his birthday cake, so I make it.
Wouldn't call yourself a master baker.
No, I would not. No, I would not.
That's a great joke. You're welcome, everyone.
But well, I know. The thing is, I probably am master level, just not one of my hobbies, you know. But no, I made my son like an Elmo cake for his first birthday. For his second birthday, I made him a Mike Wazowski cake from Monsters Inc.
Oh, from Monsters Inc. Yeah, nice.
Didn't turn out very well. Didn't make it on the gram, I'll say. But what do you call it? When I went to the shop to get the ingredients, there was like a 3 or 4 month period in Northern Ireland where you couldn't buy any flour anywhere. Like there was no flour on the shelf, and I was like, Jesus, everyone's baking all over the place. But I had to bake this one cake, and I just couldn't get flour for it.
Yeah, that I vaguely remember that period. It was the same in England as well. Like everyone just decided they were gonna do their sourdough starter in the same weekend.
Yeah, my brother.
Yeah, your brother got fucking into that. Like, you know, like I'm calling you out.
No, it wasn't me. Although I did eat some of his sourdough cookies, and they are delectable.
That's great. I've never had one. That doesn't sound good, but I mean, yeah, I don't know. Sourdough.
Like, what? Do you not
I'm
like
hit and miss with sourdough. It's all right. It's okay. I'm hit and miss.
Jeez, might get some sourdough today. Right, okay, so Always the Foreigner says, again, Always the Foreigner, you got to change that name. You're not a foreigner on this channel.
Yeah, you're
right?
a welcome friend.
Yeah, you're always the welcome friend. First of all, congratulations, Konrad, for completely calling that ending.
Thank you.
As to my real question, why are both your theories... What are both your theories as to how Steve wound up a greaser in what looks like England?
Listen,
also, well, he's there filming the OA.
We've said the first episode of season 1, season 3, episode 1, is going to be an origin story for. What did you say his name is? Patrick something.
It's Patrick Gibson. And it's it's basically going to be the opening of Terminator 2, where he travels back from the future and he's naked and he stands up and it's playing Bad to the Bone as he walks up to a biker and tells him he needs their clothes, their boots, and their motorcycle. That makes so much sense to me.
Yeah.
Like, he travelled into his body while he was naked, and then he was like, just went to the nearest biker. Yeah. I love that.
I need your clothes, your boots, and parkour lessons.
Yeah. No, he already knows parkour.
That's true, he already knows parkour. It doesn't
Every version of Steve knows parkour.
Yeah.
The question is, what did Jason Isaacs feel whenever he was amalgamated with this person who loves sucking on earphones?
Yeah, he's like, oh, I've just developed a fetish.
It's like the actor Jason Isaacs was like having to like sterilize them between each take and everything. But then he's all of a sudden the guy who was doing it in his real life gets transported.
He's taking them home at night, just like to stick the disgusting rubber in his mouth. I'd be horrified by that. It is literally he's developed a new fetish, and rightfully he is ashamed of it, as he should be.
Yeah,
so I wonder if we'll see him wrestle with that.
That's why he had that weird voice, because he was like coming to terms with it. He's like, I'm Jason, and then he had like the thing in his head where he's like, oh my god, now I suck earphones. Isaacs.
Yeah, now I'm into ear stuff.
Yeah. I will say, see those little earphones where like it's got like the weird flappy rubber on it.
Yes.
I never use those. I can't use them. I only ever use headphones. I can use the little plasticky ones. They're probably less hygienic. I don't know why, but I cannot use those ones with the little flaps of rubber. Those
are the only ones I use.
Well, you're using different ones right now, Konrad. I can see them on your head.
Oh no, but like this is, you don't want to get
headphones,
bleed out. Using earbuds for recording. But yeah, like out and about, I'll never wear headphones like this. They're too bulky to transport.
Oh really? No, I suppose you don't drive, whereas I just have.
Like if I'm like riding my bike or something, I'll just be like, I'll have earbuds in, because having stuff like this, it's just like they're gonna fall off at some point.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. I when I go into the shops by myself or whatever, I'll have these in the car and I'll take them in with me. But my point is, the little flappy rubber, it just grosses me out. Like, okay, so this is something that people wouldn't know about me, but Konrad, I don't even know if you know this. I have a real phobia of plastic, right?
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
that must be hard in the modern age to have a phobia of plastic.
Plastic like this, right? So on my earphones here, it's not that big of a deal. What I mean by it is, like a Coke bottle, for example.
Yeah.
If someone else drinks out of a Coke bottle, I cannot have a drink of it. Like the idea, like for me, plastic, once it's not brand new anymore, is just the most disgusting thing I've ever seen. Like when I think it comes from, like, how sometimes plastic's so old it starts to mist and stuff.
Yeah.
And it's all like it can go quite rough as well. There's just a really weird thing within me that I honestly have a phobia of plastic. It's thinner plastics are the worst. If you have a real thick, meaty bit of plastic, right, and it goes through the wash, and I could be like, okay, this is a big enough bit of plastic, I trust it. But thin little bits of plastic, nah. The idea of drinking out of someone's drink, that's a little.
That's like
the
anti hap, basically. Like you're basically diametrically opposed to hap's fetish for plastic that has been in people's mouths.
Exactly. Yeah. But what's ironic about it as well is that the little plastic headphones, which are earphones, which are just literally a little circle, I can use them because they're not going in my mouth. It's like the idea of I can't even talk about it. But the little rubber ones, because they collect dirt, it's a different. Anyway, you just get me, you guys. Like
I used to be a big chewer of pens and other plastic things. I still am to a certain extent. So I kind of inadvertently don't. Or I guess maybe I'm closer to Hap's end of the spectrum than yours in that respect, which is a worrying
This might
thought.
blow your mind, Konrad.
Go on.
But I'm a pen chewer too. But I only chew a pen if I know it's mine and it's brand new and it was mine. See, if someone wants to lend me their pen, I will touch the part where I need to write. I will never touch the end of the pen.
That's probably wise. Keep it uncontaminated as much as possible.
Yeah. All right, well, join us next week when we'll...
For more pen talk.
More pen talk. Now, I've got one more question.
Okay.
Vic Disco, Ted, says...
Hello.
Congrats on the prediction, Konrad. I honestly never saw that coming. A question for both of you guys. While I really enjoyed the series overall and was surprised that they cancelled it, do you think the writers honestly had a game plan for ending it coherently? Or do you think they would have dragged it out season after season until it made no sense? And Ted finishes this with what I feel is a personal attack against me. Lost comes to mind as I write this. Thoughts?
Yeah. Get him, Vic. I think everything is kind of like perfect in your imagination, and I think this is a great example of that. That's why it's so sad that it got cancelled. Is that in our imagination they absolutely nailed the execution on all of the following 3 seasons and end it perfectly. The reality is, this show is so broad and so wild that it would be super difficult for them to end it satisfyingly, and you know, to even remotely deliver on half the stuff that they actually set up. With that said, I think in this season especially, they have shown themselves capable of doing some pretty like nuts stuff in terms of managing their narratives and their kind of ideas about where the plot is actually going. So, you know, I'm not going to sit here and say I think they definitely would have nailed it, but I think they deserved to have a chance to do it. And it would have been nice to see where they went with it. But it could have gone lost. And I say that as someone who's only ever seen the first season of Lost, where I watched that and I was like, I'm okay. I don't need any more of this.
Well, you're wrong on that regard. But the I think I don't know. I think I get what you mean. Like, the season 3 and 4 are usually the places where it makes or breaks a show. If they have a good season 3 and 4, they'll probably be good for it all.
Just like Game of Thrones.
Nah, Game of Thrones was different because obviously eventually the books ran out. But like, okay, season 3 of this show could have been terrible. But I think if they did it well, it would have made me confident that the rest would be good. Let's talk about Lost for a second. Now, Lost, right?
You've set him off now, mate.
I'm happy. I'm happy that people. I'm happy for people to have their own opinions on Lost. Obviously, the idea of it dragging on for season after season is kind of correct, because basically they wanted it to be 3 seasons. They planned for it to be 3 seasons. It was going to be 3 seasons, and then they finished season 2 halfway through. I think halfway through season 3, the producers, like the TV station ABC, came to them and went, "Yeah, we don't want you to finish yet. You need to continue."
J.J. Abrams decided he liked money, and
no, J.J. Abrams wasn't involved. J.J. Abrams only.
Is he not a producer on that show?
J.J. Abrams was like the co-creator. He created like the first 2 episodes, and then the showrunners were Damon Lindelof and Carlton Cuse from that point on. J.J. Abrams does a lot of stuff where he'll just go in, start something, and then piss off again. So that's what he did. But they had the 3-season arc planned, and then somewhere after season 2, during season 3, this TV channel decided they wanted more. So then they had to rewrite on the fly and create a 4th season. And they eventually ended on 6. They managed to convince them to end on 6, which is nuts when you think about it, because even 6, I would imagine, this TV station still wanted more, so...
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, TV stations are famous, like, as Netflix have demonstrated here, like, they will run a show into the ground until they don't think they can make any more money out of it, and then just kill it dead. So that's the perennial battle of artists with production companies or TV networks.
Exactly. Right, guys, that's us. We have finished watching the OA now. We are done. Next week, we will be doing the OA Theory Matrix episode, which is always good fun, so join us for that. Yep. We will also be predicting what I think will happen in the future in terms of the OA. I'll also be telling you about a few times the show, let's be honest, didn't nearly, but nearly came back. I'll also be... we'll also, I'm sure, be looking forward to Emmett. I'm going to try and get Emmett to come on with us next week to record 5 or 10 minutes, and we can have a chat about Dark with him, even though he's never seen it. It would be funny to hear. It'd be nice to hear like his original 5-minute take on what he thinks it's about, and then we'll sort of go to season 1, the week after. But yeah, so thanks very much, guys. If you want to subscribe on Culture Cave on YouTube, that'd be great. If you can subscribe on audio apps, if that's how you listen to it, great. If you want to send us an email, adpodmail@gmail.com. Links in the description for Discord, links in the description for a t-shirt if you want to support the channel. If you don't want a t-shirt, you just still want to support the channel, there's also like a tip jar link there. Put a comment underneath, like the video, engagement, guys. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you later. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening. The After Dark podcast has been a Culture Cave production. Please subscribe on audio apps as well as on YouTube at The Culture Cave. Join us next week as Konrad journeys further into the unknown.